Midichlorians are a microscopic life form that resides within all living cells.
For humans, the more mitochondria we have, the healthier we are and the more energy we have to carry about our day-to-day activities. When we look at the damage to the mitochondria, it really is oxidative stress. And where does that oxygen comes from? It's from breathing. Antioxidants might not necessarily always be the best thing because you're reducing that beneficial oxidative stress that allows your body to adapt and get stronger. It is incredibly important to make sure that dysfunctional cells are removed from the body when they're supposed to be, because if that doesn't happen, they can stick around and continue to divide, and that's the start of cancer.
So like, what are some of the nutrients that gonna help to promote mitochondrial efficiency?
Yeah, so the one that I think most people will be familiar with when we talk about mitochondrial nutrients is coenzyme Q10. It's a readily available supplement, and coenzyme Q10 is a critical component of the electron transport chain, or oxidative phosphorylation. So going back to that third process of energy making. So when I talked about the electrons flowing from one complex to the next, coenzyme Q10 occupies what I would call the bottleneck of the process. So if you look at a schematic of the electron transport chain, electrons enter at complex 1 and complex 2. And both of those complexes pass electrons off to coenzyme Q10, which then takes the electrons to complex 3 and then down the chain. So the fact that coenzyme Q10 has to accept electrons from 2 different complexes, again, if you just look at a schematic and you have to identify a bottleneck, I would say CoQ10 is that bottleneck. So when we have low levels of CoQ10, that's when our bodies are not able to produce the energy that it needs, and many different things can go wrong. And that's one of the reasons why coenzyme Q10 in a number of different studies has been shown to be of benefit for all sorts of different health conditions. Magnesium is also another important nutrient. Excuse me. Magnesium forms a critical part of the ATP molecule. So when we talk about ATP, I know we just say ATP, but in reality, it's magnesium ATP. And that's because that phosphate tail is stabilized by an ion of magnesium. Further, magnesium is a cofactor in many different chemical reactions that happen in the body, and many of them related to the energy making process. So making sure that we have enough magnesium in our diet is also critical, but unfortunately, most people don't get enough magnesium. D-ribose is another one. D-ribose is the backbone of the adenosine molecule that forms ATP. And when we are low in the substrates of adenosine, or the purine pool, it's our body's ability to create D-ribose is actually the rate limiting step in bringing our bodies back to health. So if we can get exogenous sources of D-ribose, that really speeds up the process. And there are many others. I mean, creatine is another one that's typically seen as a sports nutrition supplement, but now research is showing that it's incredibly beneficial to things like cardiovascular health, neurological health, cognitive health, and this all relates back to its ability to help our mitochondria produce energy. So there are many different things, and that's the good thing, is that we have different options.
Yeah, you mentioned a bunch of them in your book, but one thing that popped out for me was like PQQ. I haven't heard about that one before. So like, can you mention like briefly mention what's that about? What do you use?
Yeah, so PQQ is a relatively newly discovered nutrient. And at one point, I think it was thought to be a vitamin. So the definition of a vitamin is a nutrient that's critically important for our health, or at least one biochemical reaction, and that our bodies don't produce it, so we have to get it from an external source. Now, newer research is questioning whether it's really a vitamin or not, but by definition. But what we're starting to see is that we do really need small amounts, and because our bodies don't produce it, we have to get it from external sources, from our food. And one of the things that studies on PQQ has been shown to do, now keep in mind when we're looking at human clinicals, they're using much higher doses than we would typically find in food, in the range of say 20 milligrams, which is a lot. we see benefits to things like cognitive health. Numerous human clinicals have shown benefits to our ability to function at a higher cognitive capacity. Other studies, I think animal studies, have shown that as long as we have enough PQQ in the body, we can reduce the damage that occurs from ischemic events like heart attack and stroke. It's been shown to help improve repair of the neurological system. So there are a number of different that come from PQQ, and a lot of that really boils down to the fact that it improves the function of the mitochondria. And how does it do that? It essentially, it does a number of different things, but with respect to the mitochondria, it was one of the first nutrients to show something called mitochondrial biogenesis. So essentially what that means is we're producing more mitochondria. The benefit to this is that, and this goes back to what we talked about at the start of our conversation, the more mitochondria we have, the more energy that cell can produce. So by helping the mitochondria divide and create more mitochondria in the cell, PQQ basically just ramps up energy production in the cells, and everything starts to work better.
He could use the force to influence the midichlorians to create life.
Wow, yeah, that's quite fascinating. Yeah, but what about some actual foods? Which kind of foods contain these compounds?
Yeah, so this is where I think a lot of people are happy to hear that by far the best source of PQQ is cacao, or theobroma cacao, or dark chocolate. That is extremely high in PQQ. What's interesting that next best is human breast milk, which is something that is unfortunately not something that is readily available for most people. But under that is pretty much all other foods. Now, if I had to generalize, I would say fermented foods are going to be higher in PQQ, and that's because bacteria are what produce PQQ. So when we use bacteria to ferment foods, there's going to be a little bit more PQQ in fermented foods versus non-fermented foods. But it's also interesting to note that when we create chocolate, theobroma cacao, the cocoa beans, actually go through a fermentation process as well. So that's one of the things I talk about in my book is I think that's one of the reasons why dark chocolate consumption has been linked to so many different health conditions. And of course, I never want to discount the other healthy compounds that are found in dark chocolate. But one of the things that a lot of people don't mention and don't even know about is the PQQ content of chocolate. And when you think of dark chocolate showing benefits to cognitive function, reduces the risk of cardiovascular diseases, improves athletic performance and endurance. All these things, if you look at the mechanism, can be related back to mitochondrial function and mitochondrial health. And if it's the best source of PQQ, we can extrapolate and conclude that maybe it's the PQQ content that's allowing healthy chocolate to be so healthy. Again, in moderation.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, like usually people associate dark chocolate with antioxidants and the caffeine and theobromine, but yeah, the PQQ thing that makes more sense in a sense that it's actually promoting mitochondrial biogenesis. But like coenzyme Q10, what foods have coenzyme Q10?
So coenzyme Q10 is predominantly found in animals. That makes sense. When we eat the animals, we're eating their cells and mitochondria, and therefore their coenzyme Q10. The interesting thing is that organ meats are far better sources of coenzyme Q10 than just the meat or the flesh. And that again goes back to when we even in the human body, when we look at the energetic demands of different tissues and organs in our body, the organs are often more energy intensive tissues in the body. So again, if we say that's true for animals as well, if we eat organ meats, that's where we're going to see the greatest concentration of things like CoQ10.
Yeah, like you mentioned earlier as well, like the heart and these metabolically very active tissues, they have more mitochondria. So you're basically eating the mitochondria of the animal in this sense as well.